Hi, I'm Jacqueline. My parents were members of the city council, which meant they were quite influential. They treated me like I was the most fragile flower in the world. That pink atrocity was my... I could thank my parents for that. Did they think I was a Disney princess? I didn't like it, but I tried not to upset Mom and Dad. That's why I was hiding something from them. Psst, I'm gonna tell you my secret. I put on my backpack and tried to sneak out of the house quietly. But then, Mom saw me and said that I was coming to a restaurant with them. That wasn't part of my plans. However, I had no choice but to agree. Mom eyed my backpack suspiciously. What have you got there? Just some textbooks. She believed me, and we got in the... Something went wrong on the way to the restaurant. A warning light came on in the car, and Dad said that we had to go to an auto repair. Luckily, we'd just driven past a sign about the opening of a new garage, so we headed there. The owner greeted us joyfully, and said that he'd only just moved to the city and was looking for new customers. While the car was being examined, I quietly went outside and took out my Hi, I'm not coming today. I couldn't sneak away from my parents. I hung up and heard dogs bark behind me. Oh no, stray dogs terrified me. My blood ran cold and I was about to start running away when a motorcycle suddenly stopped in front. The guy on it took off his helmet and grinned confidently. Why is a princess like you walking alone at such a late hour? I couldn't stand such an arrogant guy. He said running away from dogs was dangerous because they would start chasing you right away and offered me a ride. The stranger looked like a real troublemaker, but the dogs surrounded us and kept snapping their teeth. So I agreed and got on his... Let's go. My parents are in the auto repair shop down the street. When we got there, Mom and Dad almost fainted when they saw me on a bike with a... Have you lost your mind? It's too dangerous. Who is this scoundrel? Before I could say that the guy had helped me, the repair shop owner stood up for... This is my son Robert. He's a good boy. My parents sneered that good boys didn't look like criminals and sat me in the... The next morning, I met Eddie on the way to school. We often walked together. He was a self-obsessed goody two-shoes and always talked about him. You know that my parents own a pet shop, right? They wanted to open another one, but some bastards rented the place that they had their eye on. Can you imagine? See, Eddie only cared about his own problems. People often asked how I could stand him. To be honest, I only hang out with him because he knew some things that I wanted to keep secret. We saw girls crowding around a guy in the school parking lot. Huh, it was Robert. Was he really going to be studying with us? Look at that jerk. He must be so full of himself. I thought so too. Robert was not my type. He was too arrogant. My classmates, however, threw themselves on him. The new guy tried to hit on me at recess. Hello, princess. Didn't I save you yesterday? Let's skip classes and get to know each other. Ugh, how could he be so shameless? I reluctantly told him that my name was Jacqueline. Then Eddie came up to us and told him to stay away from me. Are you her boyfriend? We can figure it out ourselves. Don't mess with... And then Eddie did something creepy. He grabbed a flower pot and used it to smash the window. It was nuts! The principal immediately came running and asked who did it. It was Robert. He's a psycho. Robert said that he would have never destroyed school property. I didn't do it. Jacqueline, tell her what really happened. Yeah, Jacqueline, tell her. Everyone stared at me. My throat was dry. Eddie was smiling smugly because he knew that I couldn't go against him. I hated lying, but I had no choice, so I said that the new guy had broken the window. I knew you would be a troublemaker. You're getting a detention, Robert. Go to my office. Before following her, Robert looked at me with disappointment. Wow, I thought better of you, Prince. Whatever. I was gonna go to practice after classes. All I had to do was ask Eddie to cover for me. You know, I'm getting tired of doing... Please, Eddie, I didn't tell on you, did I? I'll do the homework for you next... Make it 2 weeks and we have a deal. I sighed and agreed. Soon I got to the stadium. I could finally relax and be myself. I pulled a helmet out of my backpack and walked over to my motorcycle. Surprised? Yeah, I liked motor racing and kept it a secret from my parents. I wanted to win the upcoming competition and finally tell them about my hobby. If Mom and Dad saw how good I was at it, then maybe they wouldn't be too angry. I did a few laps around the stadium and stopped to rest. Then I heard a familiar voice. I recently moved here and I'm looking for a new motor racing club. You'd be lucky to have me. I'm faster than the wind. Oh no, don't tell me it was that cheeky Robert again. Our coach frowned and said that he doubted Robert was faster than our best racer. Really? Who's that? Everyone pointed at me. I smugly took off my helmet and flipped my hair. Princess? Wow. It's Jacqueline. When will you remember that, you jerk? Robert said that he was pleasantly surprised but still disappointed I'd lied to the principal. And then he did a few laps around the stadium and, oh no, he almost broke my record. Wow, Jacqueline, it seems you have a worthy competitor. That was not part of my plans. I was the team's top racer. No arrogant pretty boy would change that. I decided to practice even more. To do that, I asked Eddie to cover for me and tell my parents that we were getting ready for an important test together. Sure, but in return, you will also help me with something. He told me that he hated how all the girls had fallen for Robert. He wanted to get the new kid kicked out of school. Robert has poor academic performance and often skips classes. Getting rid of him should be easy. Oh, I wasn't a fan of Robert, but I wasn't gonna stoop to Eddie's level either, so I refused to help him. He looked so pissed off it made my blood run cold. Are you sure? I could turn your life into a living hell if I told your parents how long you'd been lying to them. That vindictive bastard! Damn it, I couldn't let my parents find out about my hobby yet. I was in a desperate situation, so I ended up agreeing to help Eddie. From that moment on, I started to help him set up Robert. We scratched his name on his desk so that the teachers would think he did it and threw away his test papers. One day I put on a helmet that looked like Robert's and rode the bike across the school lawn. Robert was constantly called to the principal's office and got a ton of detentions, but it seemed like he didn't care about it at all. He cared more about his bike than the grades. His reputation as a troublemaker only made the girls like him more. I tried to convince Eddie it was time to stop, but he seemed to have lost it. He needs to go. Then he shoved a can of paint into my hands and said that he had painted something on the door of the principal's office and wanted me to frame Robert. Oh, I hated it. I reluctantly took the paint and walked into the boys' locker room. I was just about to put the spray can into Robert's backpack when he suddenly appeared behind me. Well, the crime of the century has been solved. Are you so afraid of a fair fight that you've decided to resort to dirty tricks? I wanted to sink through the floor. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but couldn't explain to Robert that our rivalry in this motorcycle club had absolutely nothing to do with it. His family clearly supported him, so I knew he wouldn't understand what it was like to wear a mask in front of my parents, so I proudly straightened my back and left without a word. Let him think what he wants. In the evening, I had dinner with my parents and their friends. Mom and Dad were singing my praises and bragging about how obedient and wonderful I was. I felt like a trained dog. Sit, stand, smile. Well done. Here's a bone for you. I had to play piano for the guests all evening to please my parents. Living in the fake pink Barbie house was suffocating. That's why I was over the moon when I went to practice the next day. I could finally get my mind off things when I drove my bike. Whee! Then Robert showed up at the stadium. That immediately ruined my mood. I didn't want to talk to him, so I stepped aside and just watched him. You know, he really was a great racer. He didn't just mindlessly go at full throttle, but skillfully maneuvered and never forgot about safety. Losing to such an opponent wouldn't be embarrassing. I had been feeling so guilty that I couldn't even sleep, so I decided it was time to apologize. I bought 2 milkshakes and came up to Robert. My treat, I always drink them after practice. He squinted at me incredulously. Are there cockroaches in mine? But then he immediately laughed and said he was just joking. It's just that you weren't very nice to me before. I couldn't argue with that. I plucked up the courage and apologized for causing him so much trouble. So you've been messing with me because that moron Eddie asked you to? I told him that I had been careless and my helmet had fallen out of my locker one day. Eddie saw it. He followed me and saw me ride a bike at the stadium. I was terrified that he would tell my parents about it, but he just smiled and promised that he would keep my secret. I thought he was a good guy back then. We started to hang out together, but then he started to ask me to do all sorts of stuff for him. If I wanted to keep my secret. At first it was small things. For example, he asked me to help him with biology, but Eddie kept getting bolder and bolder, and it got to the point where I was setting you up. I'm really sorry. Robert suddenly moved closer to me and looked into my eyes. A little lie can turn into a huge problem. You should tell your parents that you like motorsports, and stop listening to Eddie. It's easy for you to say. Your parents never punish you for skipping classes or getting detentions. Robert grimly replied that he was only skipping to help his father at the auto repair shop. They'd moved to our city to start over. His dad's last business had failed. If the shop didn't make a profit, Robert's family would be up to their cars in debt. Wow. Robert convinced me that I had to fight for my right to do what I loved. So I went home, determined to talk to my parents. Eddie called me and told me that he had a great plan. Since Robert wasn't expelled, we should make his family's business go bankrupt so that they'd leave. You could ask your parents for help since they're city council members, right? I wondered how Eddie knew about Robert's family's business. In any case, I was no longer going to dance to his tune. You'll regret it. Oh no. Why had I put up with the antics of that jealous moron for so long? When I came home, I realized I had underestimated how cunning Eddie could be. My parents were red with anger when I saw them. They said that they knew I had fallen in with a bad crowd. Eddie told them that I was dating a troublemaker who taught me how to ride a motorcycle and convinced me to run away from home. Can you imagine? What kind of nonsense was that? I tried to tell them that I was serious about motorsports and even planned to win a competition the next day, but they didn't listen to me and grounded me for a month. Ugh. But that wasn't the end of it. In the evening, Robert called me and angrily said that he shouldn't have trusted me. What are you talking about? Turned out the inspectors had come to their auto repair shop. My parents had apparently sent them. They found some violations and closed the shop. Oh no, now Robert's family would go bankrupt. Were you really so afraid that I would beat you in a fair competition that you decided to get rid of me like this? He hung up. I went to my parents and demanded an explanation. We couldn't let that brat be a bad influence on you. Luckily, Eddie found a good solution. Now that messy family will leave our city. Ugh, Eddie, I'd had it with him. Even though I had been forbidden from leaving the house or even thinking about motorcycles, the next day I sneaked out of my room and headed to the competition. I had gone too far to miss it now. I also had to talk to Robert and explain everything to him. When I was passing by the closed auto repair shop, I saw something weird. Eddie's parents had opened a pet store there. Now that I thought about it, Eddie had told me that the building their parents were interested in had been bought by someone else. I realized that Eddie was trying to get rid of Robert not because the girls liked him, but to help expand his family's business. That bastard, he was even worse than I thought. Then Eddie himself appeared and sarcastically clapped his hands. Oh, congrats. You finally figured out the truth. You won't get away with this. First I'll win the competition, and then I'll figure out how to put you in your place. I rushed to the stadium. I wanted to talk to Robert before the start of the race, but it was too late. I only had the time to register and change my clothes. At the start, Robert pointedly did not look in my direction. We heard the signal and the competition began. I forgot about everything and became one with the bike. I felt happy and free. Wait, I won the race! The team congratulated me and the coach told me that I could prepare for bigger competitions now. Wow, that was awesome. However, my joy was incomplete. After all, Robert looked miserable. I was about to approach him, but my furious parents and smirking Eddie blocked my way. Damn it, he must have told them I sneaked out of home. Mom and Dad were fuming with anger. They started to scold me and said that ladies weren't supposed to be racers and that it could be dangerous, but this time I stood up for myself. I am not a set of stereotypes about girls. I'm a person and have my own interests. Whether you like it or not, I'm not saying goodbye to motorsports. Then, I said that Eddie was just using them to help his parents' business. Unfortunately, Mom and Dad didn't care about that. However, Robert liked my speech. He rode up to us and said that I won fair and square and should stay in motorsports. My coach and the guys from our team agreed as well. My parents were displeased, but let me go even though I was technically grounded. When I changed my clothes and parked my bike, Robert came up to me and congratulated me on my victory. I liked how you stood up to your parents. A brave guy inspired me. I decided to keep doing what I loved, even if Mom and Dad didn't approve of my hobby. Soon enough, something unexpected happened. My parents were kicked out of the city council for abusing their power. Robert's family got their auto repair shop back, so they didn't have to move again. The principal found out who had actually painted her door and kicked Eddie out of the school. I'm glad I don't have to see him every day anymore. I learned my lesson. You should stand up for what you believe in. I also realized that even the smallest lie can have huge consequences. What did you hide from your parents? Come on, tell us your secrets in the comments down below.